good night, good evening. I am Rodrigo Ortega. I'm here again with Silvia and Charles. I'm today substituting Stevan as the host because Stevan needed to travel, and I hope I can live up to the responsibility. Stevan left with me today. So, as usual, I would say hello to our friends, and I will allow Silvia to greet all the people. Hi, Silvia.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. Once again, we are all together. Time seems to go faster and faster these days. But it's always wonderful to be together. And let's hope that today we'll be able to talk about things that will be of interest for everyone and help us understand the world around us. So, boa noite a todos, boa tarde. É um prazer estar com vocês novamente hoje. E esperamos que a discussão seja uma discussão boa, que possa ajudar ao entendimento de muitas coisas que talvez a gente não entenda. Muitas bênçãos a todos. Thank you.
Thank you, Silvia. Hi, Charles. Como ça va?
Hi, Rodrigo. Hi, Silvia. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. Very happy to be here again with you today to tell about this subject, this famous drawer, as we call, of extraordinary and supernatural, which is so practical to put the things that we don't understand inside. And we will try to analyze this subject a little bit better. Bonjour, bonsoir à tous. Très heureux d'être parmi vous aujourd'hui à nouveau pour parler du merveilleux et du surnaturel en vous expliquant la position spirit à ce sujet.
All right. Thank you, Charles. So thank you all once again. So I'm Rodrigo. So thank you for being here with us. We hope we can live up to the responsibility of speaking about this topic. It's a great topic, one of the fundamental topics of Spiritism, and I hope we can touch your heart. Hola a todos, soy Rodrigo, bienvenidos seáis todos. Es con mucho honor que estamos aquí hoy presentando esta live. El tema es muy importante, es muy interesante, es uno de los pilares de la doctrina espírita y esperamos ahí tocar el corazón de todos con esta live y cumplir con nuestra responsabilidad. Pues, so therefore, let's start with a video. So let's see if I can make use of the technological things here. So aspects. So I'll share my screen with you. So let me just see. I'll share screen, and then I'll try to share our video of today. Just let's see.
The wonderful things that we can see in science too is the understanding of the physical world evolving to the understanding of the spiritual world. As we break down particles to their smallest pieces, they stop being particles and they become forces and energy. So in fact, matter is just forces and energy, which means materialism is actually killing itself. So it's a fantastic understanding of the world around us because it becomes about forces and not about matter. And one of these forces that we believe are everywhere is the force of the spirit. And now with thought, processes, and so forth, we're understanding that also has a pull, it also has a force on everything we do. And science has already shown us that there are invisible forces acting on us, magnetism, for instance. So it becomes hard for us to say, I only believe in that which my eye can see, because there are a lot of things that our eye cannot see, yet they're there. So we think that the time for the spirit, the era for the spirit is upon us, in the sense that we'll begin more and more to pay attention to these invisible forces that affect our lives, which resembles and lends credence to everything that a lot of religions and ethical philosophies have told us throughout time. There is indeed a different world out there that also plays an important role in our lives. And that's why it's so exciting to read Spiritist materials in general, because they make the connection between both science and these old traditions in a way that it makes plain to both of them that they are partially right. It is possible for us to believe in a scientific world and understand how it works, and yet be certain through experimentation and observation that there is life after life, and that the spirits of those who have come before us live on, and sometimes can come back to connect with us as well.
Okay. So we are back. Let me try to give you an introduction as well to this topic, which comes from the Medium's book, The Extraordinary and the Supernatural. If the belief in spirits and their manifestations were an isolated concept, the product of a theory, then it could certainly be suspected of being illusory. But who can explain to us why it may be found to be so alive among all ancient and modern cultures and in the holy books of all known religions? Some critics claim that it's because throughout story, humans have loved the extraordinary. Then we must ask, what do you mean by extraordinary? And they would reply, whatever is supernatural. But what do you mean by supernatural? Whatever is contrary to the laws of nature. Then you are so knowledgeable about those laws that you know how to set limits on the power of God? That's an excellent question.
Indeed, indeed. So let's start, Rodrigo. You are already in the run, huh? With a question to you, if you allow me. And the question would be linked to what you just read, this introduction. What is the proof that Spiritism brings us about spirits intervention in people's life, and proof which makes that this intervention of spirits is not supernatural, but at contrary is natural? So can you a little bit elaborate about this?
Yeah, of course. So as we have read in the text that comes from Kardec in Medium's book, so mediumship is present in all areas. So since we know ourselves as humans, so we have faced this kind of spiritual communication through like the prophets and Moses, and so in every place, so in Egypt, in India, so all the places we have seen these manifestations of spirits, of communications. But then Kardec went further, went deeper in this analysis. Kardec mentioned to us that there are two ways to prove that, which he used that on his, how can I say, studies, scientific studies. One is the theory, a theoretical proof, and the second is the fact, so factual basis. The theory is the following. So it's the one we all in Spiritism know a lot. So there's no intelligent effect without an intelligent cause. So whenever we see an intelligence in a consequence, or if we see a chair, for instance, this chair is not there by casuality or by chance. So there must be an intelligence behind the person. We know it. We are all humans, so the people who build up the chairs, so they must be intelligent enough to first of all think on a purpose for that scene, and secondly, based on that purpose, to build up a chair that fits to that purpose, and then have some engineering, like let's say behind that, to build up this chair with the materials strong enough to hold someone sitting on it. So that's the basis. So there's no, the theoretical proof is that there's no intelligent effect without an intelligent cause behind that. And then, of course, how Kardec used that on his studies. So by checking the levitating tables, so and all the mediumship or the manifestations of spirits through the mediums, he started looking at it. And by looking at it, he started receiving some answers. So first of all, it used the tables to knock on the ground or to make sounds, to demonstrate like letters, like the Ouija we use, some people use today still. So to demonstrate the letters, to compose some phrases and some answers that are intelligent. So there's an intelligence behind that. And Kardec started checking that by himself, asking questions, and he noticed that that those answers were intelligent because they were answering to intelligent questions. So there were intelligent answers to the questions, and therefore those questions or those answers were not. There was no possibility after several studies or several checks that though the mediums themselves they could answer that question, because the knowledge behind the answer couldn't come from the people, from the mediums who were responding to that. So that those are the proofs that Kardec used, or the how can I say, the ways that Kardec used to prove not only to himself but to others about the intervention of spirits in our lives, and to show that this is natural. Because if that happens for some reason, and if a table levitates, and it levitates on a purpose or with for some reason, and the spirits themselves they answer the question that the levitation of the tables they were possible because there were some laws, physical laws that we didn't know that before, because it is impossible with the tools we have so far to measure or to understand that, which now we know that the method or the way it was possible, it was because the spirits they were using their intelligence, their willpower to manipulate their fluids from their perispirits, and using the fluids from the mediums, and with those fluids they could like create an artificial life to the tables, and therefore the tables could levitate. But there was no derogation of the laws of God. It was natural. And then some people say, okay, but it's very difficult because there are several mediums who fake the answers. They could read so many cases. We see people, the mediums, they do some self-study or some survey in internet, in Facebook or whatever, and they have ways to answer some questions to some people, which could be firstly seen as like, oh, this was answered by spirits, but it was not. But because there are people who fake, who are false mediums, it doesn't mean that we don't have real mediums. So that's what Kardec says. So the possibility of having false things, like, it doesn't mean that we could not have the original or the true ones. And to illustrate that, and to prove to those people doing those questions, I'll be telling you a story. So the story of Euripides Barçanufo. Euripides Barçanufo was a great exponent of Spiritism in Brazil in the beginning of the 20th century. He lived in Sacramento, in Brazil, in Minas Gerais state. And he was an educator, a politician, a journalist, and also, after some time, a great Spiritist medium as well. First of all, before becoming a Spiritist, he was a Catholic, a very strong Catholic person. So he was very active in the Catholic Church at that time, very studying a lot the Bible and so on. But he had some questions on his mind that he couldn't have the answers. But still, he was very strict to the Catholicism. But he had an uncle called Mariano. That was the name of his uncle. And Mariano was a materialist, a strong materialist. So, but he started knowing Spiritism, and he started being interested in Spiritism and reading that. And then once he gave to Euripides the book After Death from Leon Denis, and Euripides, or at least the history says that Euripides was so astonished with the content of this book because it was answering rationally some of the questions that Euripides had on his mind that he couldn't have found yet the answers. And then he didn't know, but there was a farm called Santa Maria in Sacramento, and this farm belonged to the family, the uncles of Euripides. And in this farm, they started having these spiritist sessions or meetings, and Euripides was not aware of that. Mariano was also attending to that. Mariano, the uncle, Euripides' uncle, and they did that not only for them, but all the people who worked in the farm. They were attending to these meetings, so it was very crowded. And one day, Euripides went to participate, was invited to participate after he had read the after that book from Leon Denis. He was invited to attend to these sessions, and then he started seeing, of course, the sessions, the mediums, the spirit speaking, and he was, of course, astonished, but still skeptical about that. There's a story I saw in his there's a move telling his story as well, that he went to this session. It was fully crowded, but there were 2 seats left. They hadn't warned anyone that they would be coming to the session, but there were 2 seats available for them, for Mariano and for Euripides, by chance. And then there was a part of the mediums, the group of mediums there. There was a relative of Euripides called Aristides. Aristides was illiterate. He didn't have any intellectual development, let's say this way, no, but he was a medium. And then Euripides asked Aristides, or the spirit at that time, so he was still skeptical. He said, okay, so if our spirits are talking to us and speaking through the mediums, I want Aristides, because he knew Aristides was unable to do that himself. I want Aristides to answer or to comment and to give explanations, to comment about the Sermon of the Mountain, the blessings contained on that. And Aristides, or at least the body of Aristides, but at that time it was the spirit who did it, a very intelligent spirit, spoke about that and gave a beautiful explanation about the Sermon of the Mountain, something that it was left Euripides Barçanufo like open mouth, as we say in Brazil, so astonished, because of course Aristides was incapable or unable to speak like that. From that time on, Euripides became Spiritist and became one of the greatest Spiritists we have had in Brazil. He founded a school, the first Spiritist school in Sacramento, called Allan Kardec, giving, educating poor children for free. So, and not only that, so he was attending to, he was a great medium, capable of just having some, leaving the body and materialize himself in other places to attend other people, to help health, in other places. So I think this is a real story, and I invite you, if there's anyone here still not are skeptical about that, so I invite you to survey the story of Euripides Barçanufo, because it's a true story and illustrates to us exactly what Kardec did. He used the intelligence, or let's say science, and checks and intelligence to understand the answers from the mediums, and to certificate that it was impossible to have a communication coming from that medium with so how can I say intelligent content, or with such content, not only intelligent, but let's say that the medium wouldn't be able to tell something about in another language, for instance, in French, or because some mediums spoke in other language, the medium didn't have this knowledge to speak in such a language. So therefore, what happened with Euripides is what Kardec used, and this is the way that Spiritism brings us this proof of Spirit's intervention in our lives. So first, the theoretical, like intelligence behind the manifestations. So there should be an intelligent cause behind that. And second, observing the facts, observing the manifestations, the phenomenon, and proving or checking that this is really true and there's no false or falsification behind that. I hope I have answered your question, Charles.
Yes, Rodrigo, thank you so much. And I liked a lot you brought this case of Euripides Barçanufo, because we translated one biography of him in French something like 30 years ago. And in 2019, I was lucky to be able to visit Sacramento, to visit this Allan Kardec College, and also to visit this Fazenda, and also the Spiritist group where he was having his meeting. It's as we say, extraordinary, isn't it? But not supernatural. That's the message. So
That's
thank
right.
you so much, and we just also take the chance to say hello to Beatrice, which is here with us. And without waiting, let's go to Silvia. Second question is for Silvia, and it is the following, Silvia. Why is it so important to prove that supernatural does not exist?
Okay, interesting question. I think in a way, I don't think it's a question of proving that we need to prove that it doesn't exist. But I think was what Sisi was talking about, that materialism is killing itself, because science is advancing so far, so much now, that most of it's completely theoretical, whereas before a lot of proofs had to be done and experimented. Now most of the new theories now are completely theoretical. You either accept it or not on the basis of the ideas that it presents. But all the experiments that are being created with this theory that's being, the particles and the forces and the different forces and how many more forces there are than used to be before, all these things, all the experiments, especially the ones done in Switzerland, in CERN, always carries a little bit more, a little bit further. And then, of course, science is actually proving something that exists only in the world of ideas. And, like you said, it's killing itself. So I think in a way, we don't really need to try to disprove anything or to prove that this exists or that exists, but to just let it flow. And science itself, the laws of nature, humankind progresses. they will find their own things. Now, having said that, I think we need to sort of understand what is supernatural and what is I've brought here my question, sorry, I'm reading something different. What is important, what's supernatural and extraordinary? And I think one of the important things is that what is supernatural? And supernatural is a phenomena. The definition of supernatural is, if you allow me to read this, it's a phenomena or entities that are not subject to the laws of nature, and that this appears mostly in folklore and religions, and has to do with superstition or belief in the paranormal, like non-physical entities like angels and demons and spirits and God. And also, they say in this paranormal, they have disabilities, magic, telekinesis, levitation, precognition, extrasensory perception. So that's the definition of supernatural. Now we go here to what is the natural laws, because what is supernatural and what is the natural laws. So in natural laws, the definition of natural laws is a theory of ethics and philosophy that exists in theory, in ethics and philosophy, that says that all human beings possess intrinsic values that govern their reasoning and their behavior. The natural law maintains that these rules of right and wrong are inherent in people and are not created by society or court judges. Now, if we go to the question 614 of the Spirit's book, it says, what is it to be understood by natural law? And it says is the law of nature, is the law of God. The laws of God are immutable, eternal, and perfect. And it's interesting that, and then he says here also that all the laws of nature are divine laws. God is the author of all things. And also, the Spirit's books go on to explain that God has given to all the ability of knowing his laws, but it depends on each of us how much we understand. But eventually, each and every one of us will have completely understanding of the natural laws, because that's what progress depends. And we are going to evolve. This knowledge will come to all of us. And it's interesting because if you get to the definition that there exists, is exactly what the Spirit's books explains, that is inherent in man, and that everyone, no matter who they are, whatever, believers or unbelievers, materialists or religious people, they all believe in the same thing. They all have the same thing, the right and wrong. And of course, when Kardec asked the spirits, where is the law of God inscribed? And they gave one word answer: in the conscience. So it's interesting that, whether you come from a definition that is a classical definition in the dictionaries and in philosophy, ethics, and then you go to the Spirit's book, they meet together in the middle and they say exactly the same thing. And I think that's one of the things that I find so important in Spiritism. The more you learn about other things, and how is the Spirit tell you study this, learn that, don't believe anything that people say, go and search yourself, is exactly the same thing that is inherent in us, and it is in our own conscience. So for us, the supernatural does not really exist. There are only the laws of God, the natural laws, and the things that maybe at times, at the moment, we still do not know. And it is interesting because in the last 100 years or so, or maybe even in the last 40, 50 years, science has almost completely, it has done such a leap of development that's completely wiped out. And when you think that scientists in the 19th century used to think they had already discovered everything there was to know, it sounds quite shocking that they thought they knew everything. Whereas, science, and then you have a man like Einstein who completely changes the way the whole of the world, the science, and anybody understands the world and the universe. And the splitting of the atom, and we have so many changes now, and science is progressing, and it's really coming now to the understanding. Now we understand a lot more of the laws. There's very few supernatural, well, let me rephrase this. There are so many still that we don't know, but now we know that they are all part of the natural laws, and all the natural laws are given by God, created by God, is not by society, is inherent in every single person. We know what's right and wrong, unless, someone is a psychopath or something. But normally, we more or less, most of us, are guided by this inner measure that we have within us, what is right and what is wrong. And sometimes when we do something that's not right, our conscience hurts us. And it's very interesting how we ourselves are our own measure, because God already has given us this. So to think that something is supernatural or extraordinary, it's like Kardec says, because they still ignorant of the fact that this can be studied, can be researched, can be found, and can be explained within the laws. And I think that's the challenge for us as spiritists, and for anyone who really wants to have a knowledge and understanding that everything is developing, is moving, is learning. And the more we know about what science, the more spiritual we'll become. It's almost come, I think what Sissy was saying, it seems that the more scientific we become, the more spiritualized we'll become, because we'll be able to understand so many more things, and will be just simple things, apparition, spirits, communication, like the story that you told, Rodrigo, which was very interesting, how mediums who cannot read and write, when they're working mediumship, they can read and write, they can write and can do things, because there's within them the knowledge. They already know the other language, that when they are working as a medium, they speak in another language, but they already have the knowledge through the process of reincarnation. I think this is very important for us to understand, that maybe in this life, a person is unable to talk about the Sermon on the Mount because they are unable to read and write, but in previous life, they had that knowledge. So it's all part of reincarnation, is also part of law of nature. So we are growing, it's like he says here, it depends on progress, will depend on this. And that's how we'll be evolved. And I think this is something that we need to think about. So there is no need really to go into, oh no, we have to prove, because, like they say in court, the burden of proof is in the prosecution, right? So we who are defending don't need to prove anything, just need to show the facts as it is, and they are the ones who have to prove. Because it's interesting how in certain debates, how people said, yes, God doesn't exist. So why, explain to me how God exists. So it's nothing to me. You don't believe. Explain to me how you think God does not exist. So explain to me how it is. I don't have to explain to them. And it's the same thing about what is supernatural, because what I understand by the literature is that there isn't anything that exceptional, that are extraordinary, that are supernatural. Everything is within the laws of nature that are created by God, and that we have the intrinsic knowledge through our development and our enlightenment, really. We will be understanding this, and one day we'll be open to every single person, because that's what has to happen. And I think that's very important on this, because the natural laws is God's laws, eternal, immutable. They never change, because that's there and is within our knowledge, everyone. So I think, that's what I have to say for the moment. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Silvia. So yes, this has been great. Yes. So thank you so much. Very, very well said. So then I will be going to Charles, and I'll shoot a question to him. So Charles, question to you is, the fact that Spiritism is proving that there's no supernatural, there's no extraordinary. So we are just basically saying that miracles are not existing, because it has an explanation which is rational, and it can be explained. If it cannot be explained now, it will be explained someday. It will be natural. So when we do that, when we, let's say, we derogate this supernatural concept, extraordinary, do we put the power and the existence of God in check, in question?
Thank you for the question, Rodrigo. Indeed, it's a good one. And here I will ask the help of Allan Kardec himself. He was really loving this type of questions and answered them brilliantly. And the last book he wrote, Allan Kardec, is entitled The Genesis, the Miracles, and the Predictions According to Spiritism. So it's a book which is exactly dealing about these miracles. And interestingly, when you read the cover page of this book, on the cover page itself, there are 4 or 5 statements written. And one of them is saying like this: God proves God's greatness and power by immutability and not by the suspension of divine laws. Okay, so I found really this answer brilliant. If you think that God should do miracles to prove his strength, some people could say, hey, if he needs to make some exceptions, if he needs to depart from his natural laws, this means that the natural laws were not perfect. So God may be not so perfect as we thought. So it's exactly the opposite. What proves the God's greatnesses and power is exactly because the law of natures are so perfect that they do not need any suspension or any supernatural. There is nothing supernatural, in fact. The word supernatural has no meaning because nothing exists above nature. This is the statement of Spiritists. And this is what is then demonstrating the power of God. In this book, The Genesis, Kardec is also including the section 13, which is entitled Characteristics of Miracles, and with following 2 subtitles. One is Spiritism does not perform miracles, that Silvia developed very well, and you as well, Rodrigo. And the second subtitle is exactly the question we are talking about. Does God perform miracles? The title is in form of question. And in these latter subsections, item 15, Kardec is writing that as for miracle per se, since nothing is impossible for God, they could, of course, be performed by God. But has this happened? Yeah? In other words, does God derogate from the laws that God has established, which is somehow some nonsense? And Kardec is writing then, it is not up to us humans to prejudge the acts of the divinity and to subject them to the weakness of our understanding. Okay, so this question of extraordinary and supernatural stuff is basically coming from the weakness of our understanding. And Kardec is then pursuing in the same section, writing, why then would God perform miracles? To attest God's power, it is said commonly. However, does not God's power manifest much more impressively through the magnificent whole of the work of creation, through the providential wisdom presiding over the tiniest part as well as the greatest in the universe, and through the harmony of the laws that govern the universe, than through a few tiny and childish derogations that any sleight-of-hand artist knows how to imitate. And this sentence of Kardec is really extraordinary. Everything is told in it, and he is using some adjectives which are tiny or childish derogations. If you need a derogation to something, is because this something is not perfect. If the law of nature are perfect, they do not need derogations. Of course, we are somehow full of pride. The science has evolved a lot, as Daniel Assisi clearly told in the video at the beginning of this today's lecture. And it has even if you would have said 50 years ago to some people that in 50 years we could all meet live from different places around the world with video and everything, as we are doing right now, they would also say, this is extraordinary and supernatural. And indeed, it is not. So the supernatural of yesterday is often the natural of tomorrow. And this is a fact Silvia mentioned as well very clearly, that happens every day, as long as our understanding is getting better. But when we are blocked, when our understanding does not perceive the reason and the cause for some phenomenon, this extraordinary and supernatural is like a drawer. You open the drawer and you put the things that you don't like in it and close the drawer, because you don't want to give some explanation, or because this is something that is hurting a little bit your pride and whatsoever. And this is exactly what happens with us when we qualify some effects observed in the nature. So, for instance, the extraordinary faculty of Euripides Barzanulfo as being supernatural, whilst it is fully natural. And Kardec is also complementing and saying that since miracles are not necessary for the glorification of God, nothing in the universe deviates from the general laws. Nothing in the universe deviates from the natural laws. God does not perform miracles because, since the divine laws are perfect, God has no need to derogate for them. If there are occurrences that we do not understand, it is because we still lack the necessary knowledge or understanding. So again, really very bright explanation and incarnated common sense, as Flammarion qualified Allan Kardec, to make this type of reasoning, which are so strong, so simple at the same time, and clarifying all these things. I'm often telling that I was educated as per the Catholic religion when I was young. And, you know, all these questions of Trinity, of a paradise, of heaven, of hell, of miracles, of angels, of Lucifer, and so on. And really, I was confused because asking some questions without receiving an answer from the priest or whoever, I got somehow indifferent. And when I was reading this type of sentence from Kardec, it was like a kind of, you know, when you have a problem on your computer, on the hard drive, for instance, you format it again and you install the system again. And it was exactly the effect it made on me when I read also the first part of the Heaven and Hell, to clean all these ideas and showing very clearly what makes sense and what does not make sense in all this. And clearly, miracle is one of them. Miracle or supernatural does not make sense. And it's quite interesting because in France there is a book, I think I showed it already, that has been written, which is this one, God, the Science and the Proofs, by two brilliant authors. And when I read this book, the first part, I liked a lot because they are really going and seeking all the latest findings of the science and showing how all these latest findings are somehow converging to the necessity of an explanatory hypothesis of a creator, of some intelligence at the beginning of everything. And they are talking about several examples, like that the Big Bang, that there is a beginning. So science is now almost very strongly evidences that the universe started, at least the observable universe that we see today, started from a point, something like 15 billion years ago. And so the question is already, okay, what's before? Why this happened? There must be, it's an effect which has a cause. And this is leading then to the question of the divinity of God, the existence of God. And there are a lot of other arguments they show. For instance, at the Big Bang, you know, we have in thermodynamics, the principle of entropy. Entropy is always growing. This means that disorder is always growing. So according to this law of entropy, at the beginning of the universe, 15 billion years ago, the order must have been extremely, extremely high. So how can an extremely high order come out by chance or from nothing or whatever? So again, another proof that the need of an intelligence somewhere at the basis of all that. And they are quoting a lot of such examples showing how the science is converging to God. But unfortunately, in the second part of the book, I was a little bit more disappointed. Why? Because the authors, they still believe in miracles. I say it's really a pity because the first part is so brilliant, and the second part, they explain miracles of, for instance, Fatima phenomenon which occurred at the beginning of the 20th century. And because, for instance, the history of the Hebrew people, population, and so on, and explaining several of these type of phenomenon as being miracles. And they bring the miracles as a proof of the existence of God, whilst it's making exactly the opposite effort. And you see, Kardec, 150 years ago, was much more lucid than these people, which are brilliant in the first part of the book, but still, and we can feel that it is by religious influence, believing in miracles and thinking that the fact there are miracles is necessary to explain this power of God, whilst it's exactly the opposite. But okay, let's not, how to say, criticize them too much, because again, I really admire the first part of the book, which is extremely interesting. And hopefully this book will be soon translated also into English for a broader audience. And just a finishing now. You quoted already Rodrigo at the beginning in the introduction. Sorry, the Medium's book, chapter 2, and this chapter 2 is exactly the title is exactly what we are talking about today. The extraordinary and the supernatural. And the Medium's book was written in 1861, and the Genesis was written in 1867, published in 1868. And in this Medium's book, Kardec had already very clear ideas about the subject of today. And he was quoting, in addition to what we already quoted, to those who regard matter as the sole power of nature, anything that cannot be explained by the laws of matter is extraordinary and supernatural. And for them, the extraordinary is synonymous with superstition. So it's exactly what Daniel Assisi talked about in the video. It's exactly this drawer where they put the things they don't like in it. And also then adding on top to it a qualification like superstition to all the people that believe the existence of phenomena which are not explainable by the laws of matter, or who simply advance the hypothesis of the existence of the soul. And here again, I would like to thank also the book that Umberto came a few weeks ago. He was co-author together with Alexandra Moreira Almeida and a third lady, which is also from University of Juiz de Fora, bringing all the philosophical and also the phenomena which are leading to the existence in us of something else than just matter, means the spirit or the soul, which is independent of the physical body and which survives to it. So, and they also show exactly how this materialist position is unsustainable. It makes no sense anymore. And if they need really to bring qualification like superstition to the person who are thinking different, it's because really they are short of arguments to explain it. And hello, Camille. Kardec is then also summarizing at the end the stance in the following propositions, saying that all spirit phenomena have as their principle the existence of the soul, its survival upon the death of the body, and its ability to manifest itself. So it's a clear hypothesis that Spiritism, or spiritualism as well, is taking as a base for reflection. So there is also, according to this book that I just quoted from Umberto Coelho, a huge convergence of proofs, of facts, of phenomena which are leading to this. For all this huge diversity of phenomena, of facts that can be observed, and for which the easiest and the simplest explanation is exactly this, what Kardec quoted in 1861. The existence of the soul, its survival upon the death of the body, and its ability to manifest itself. It's the simplest hypothesis explaining all these phenomena, whilst the explanation which are a lot of times brought by the skeptical people or the materialist people are much more complex. They need to have several different explanations for several facts, and all this gathered at the same time in a medium which sometimes is a child or whatever. So really, it does not make sense. It is not sustainable anymore. And Kardec continues, second proposition. Since they result from a law of nature, these phenomena have nothing extraordinary or supernatural about them, at least in the common meaning of these words. Many events are regarded as supernatural because their cause is unknown, and having determined their true cause, Spiritism has relegated them back to the domain of natural phenomena. Amongst the incidents called supernatural, Spiritism shows many of them to be impossible in the first place, and therefore places them amongst superstitious beliefs. So not all what the people are saying and claiming and it makes sense. And Spiritism is Kardec was the first one saying, no, this really, this statement of this or that person or whatever does not make sense and is not in line with what we observed as a phenomenon which has a cause, whose cause is the spirit. So Spiritism does absolutely not accept the fantastic stories created by imagination. And then he's also complementing, saying that to judge Spiritism by facts, we really need to investigate and to study and to observe, and not with an open-minded, accept this change, not be blocked by change resistance, in order to have science to progress in all these fields, and without forgetting also all the philosophical and ethical or moral consequences that brings us so many resources to overcome the natural difficulties of life. So it's really a pity to miss these resources just because of dogmatic statements or classification about supernatural or extraordinary phenomena. So that's what I could answer so far on your question, Rodrigo.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you so much. Brilliant. Yes, I think it was Kardec who said as well that if you would rely only on what we can touch, see, hear, what your material senses could sense, let's say this way, it would be left very few things for us here in this world, because the grace like magnetism. So it's not something you can touch, you can see, but it exists. So would we call it so supernatural as well, just because we cannot so prove with our material senses? But it is what it is. So also like some polemic stuff, but Spiritism is not proving or not explaining anything, but it put in evidence that some things could be feasible or could be explained in the things that we study in Spiritism. For instance, we know that there are spirits who materialize themselves or their perispirits using ectoplasm. So it's possible. We have seen that. We have faced that through Spiritism. So this could be an explanation for instance, Jesus' resurrection. This could be explained somehow. This could be a possibility of Jesus making himself touchable using ectoplasm. This could be. We don't know, but we find some explanations in Spiritism that could bring to light that some things could be natural, even though we still don't have the full explanation for that. So let's go to our announcements, and I will be sharing my screen again. Let me just share it. Okay, so here we have next Wednesday again our spiritual light with metempsychosis and reincarnation. So we all be here again. Then we have our time to talk conversations on midship every 2 weeks, Tuesdays, with let me just put it as here. Every 2 weeks on Tuesdays with Rafael Caldas and Guilherme. Then we have the online course for the Medium's book with Guilherme Dias, Munir Gariba, and Charles. Here, the study of the book Nosso Lar, the Tuesdays, 8 p.m. to 9 p.m., and every fortnight. And on Wednesdays, 4 p.m., the UK coffee break with Munir Gariba, coffee break with Kardec. So then, of course, the donations needed. So if you want to give a high five and help the community in Brazil, so please do it. So here you have the data for you to extend your hand and to help some people practice charity. I think that's it. Let me just come back and stop sharing. All right, I think that's it for tonight. Thank you all for joining us, for being here with us. Great topic, great discussions. Thank you, Charles. Thank you, Silvia. So hope to see you next Wednesday. So bye-bye, everyone. Until next Wednesday. See you all. Have a great night. Great end of the week. Bye-bye.
Au revoir. Thank you.